Hi, it's Miss Deanne here at the ELC, the Early Learning Center. Once again, coming to you on Tuesday for our mindfulness learning and our mindful parenting time where we can just talk a little bit about strategies that we can use in the home. And today I just want to talk to you a little bit about what to do when your child is genuinely upset. I know each one of us, and it depends on what age your child is, but each of our children will have times just like we do of being very discouraged or upset, and may come to us crying and sobbing, or may become very distraught. And so what do? Sometimes you even can talk to them and they won't want to talk to you back, or they will just continue to sob, and we're not sure exactly what it is that's going on. So there are a few strategies that we've used here at the Early Learning Center, but also I've used as a parent myself. Sometimes when my children were really little, and especially my oldest, he was a child that couldn't really verbalize what was upsetting him or what was wrong. And as a mom, it was extremely frustrating trying to figure out what I could do. And so one of the things that we would do is we would use artwork. And I would give him paper and crayons and say, could you draw it for me? Could you draw it out for me? What happened or what is upsetting you? I try not to ever use the word why with my kids, because typically when you ask a child, why are you upset? Or why did you do that? It's a very abstract term for a child's brain, and especially if they're upset. Again, if you remember what we've been talking about, if they're upset, the amygdala is pumping out cortisol. It is flooding the prefrontal cortex, so they can't really think. So if you ask them the term why, they won't be able to really answer or respond to you in that way. So sometimes if we can use the term what, or we give them a way to be able to communicate without words, that can help. So for my oldest, being able to draw me a picture really helped. That also brings out both hemispheres of the brain, which can help them process whatever they're upset about. With my youngest child, and with some of the children that we have here at the ELC, we find that taking a walk can be really helpful. One, at first, it sometimes can remove the pressures of the situation depending on where you're at. So for example, if your child's very upset in a public place, sometimes being able to remove them to a more quiet corner or area will give them the freedom and some of the loss of that sensory overload, so that they can be able to process and to think again. Because remember, again, the cortisol is pumping when we're upset, and so we have difficulty thinking. So removing them from the situation and not having sensory overload, but then also taking a walk. And getting that kind of movement. So what happens with movement? Why is movement helpful? Sometimes when my child is really upset at home, I'll say, let's go take a walk outside. And when we're moving, what happens is that there's actually endorphins that are released in the brain. Those endorphins actually help to counteract the cortisol. They are feel-good hormone in our brain. And then when they counteract the cortisol, they just actually help us to allow us to think. So sometimes people, and that's adults included, who struggle with anxious times or being really upset and having difficulty processing that, can process better when they're on a walk than they can if they're sitting still. So just last night, my son and he was upset about something that had happened at school, and we went and took a walk around the block, and as we walked, the endorphins were going. Things didn't seem quite so bad and awful as when he first got home, and he was able to process some things, and I was able to process some things, because sometimes when when they're upset, then they react to us in a way that gets us upset. Then we've got all this cortisol going and nothing really happens. So sometimes just both of you taking a walk, drawing out a picture, can be ways to help the brain refocus and help the brain to calm down. To again, our whole goal is about learning. And if we're going to learn, instead of trying to change behavior, we're trying to learn. That way, because if you change behavior in the moment, that may be effective. But if you actually help teach your child, that's going to last a lot longer and be more applicable for the future when you're not present in their lives. So, taking a walk, helping them draw a picture, ways that we can calm the cortisol down, help the prefrontal cortex, that wise leader that does all of our emotional regulation, our problem solving, our goal setting that happens there, can happen because we are releasing endorphins, decreasing that cortisol. So I hope when either you get upset or your child gets upset this week, try taking a walk. Try drawing a picture together. Try something that will help you to calm your brains down and be able to communicate with one another in a positive, healthy way. All right, so here's for another mindful week, and I wish you all well, and see you next Tuesday.